Amen.
Okay, welcome everyone to another edition of I Am a Black Woman. Yes, I Matter, Parenting Black and Brown Children. I am so thankful to have Leanne Mayer and Quincy Malope again on my show. Like, I don't know what I've done and what energy I've sent out into the world to be blessed with these awesome ladies on with me. But thank you so much. This is such an important topic for I think all of us, whether you're actually a biological parent or not, we are talking about the next generation. The next generation, what kind of world do we want them to inherit? What kind of people do we want them to be? But before we go into all those, answering all those questions and really digging deep into what parenting means, I would love for Leanne and Quincy just tell me a little bit more about yourself. I'll start with Leanne.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. A, again, just generally, but B, because I'm with Kumar again. C, because I'm with Quincy again. And this is something that I'm super passionate about. I'm passionate about Black women and what we're doing and how we feel. But as I've said in one of my videos before, it's so important that the legacy we leave, the legacy we give to the next generation is better than the one we received. And it doesn't necessarily mean that what we received is bad, but everything that is good can be better. And that's why, I'm so happy to be here today, because this is such an important subject. Yes, I am a mother, but it's important just as a Black woman in society. What am I giving out? And how can I encourage other people to have the same positivity, other young kids, other Black women? So, thank you for having me, Kamara. And hey, Quincy, it's good to see you again.
Hi, Leanne. Hi, Kumar. Thank you so much for having me again, actually. I always feel so blessed when I get an invitation to do conversations like this, especially to have them with women like you who are open as well about your stories, because I think it's so important to have safe spaces for us, not only to be women of color, but women in general, to have a safe space where we can talk about our experiences, no matter what that experience is, and honestly. And I think that's why I like these conversations, because I also don't feel under pressure to have statistics. I don't feel under pressure to sound like an academic. I don't feel under pressure to kind of come off here and sound smart about the conversations we're having. I just really appreciate the fact that we have the conversation, have it honestly and authentically, and share our honest stories about whatever topic we're talking about. And obviously today we're talking about parenting. And I'm really excited because I am a young mom. And I've got so much in my head about how I want to parent and the kind of mom that I want to be. So I think it's really exciting to have this conversation with you, Leanne and Kumara, who have a little bit more experience in this than I do.
I mean, I think that's absolutely right? We're going to be bringing our authentic selves or maybe even vulnerable, because I think at any point in time when you're talking about being a parent, when you're talking about your own children, that's a vulnerability that you're sharing with the world. And so that's also something that I want to say thank you so much for doing. So even though this topic is about parenting Black and brown children specifically, it is open to everyone because there are just some universal truths about what it is to be a parent. So I would just love to hear, when you think about the future generation, when you're thinking about the growth and development of your child, what goes into that thought process?
So for me, it's always about I want my children to be well-rounded. And when I say well-rounded, I don't just mean from an educational perspective, I mean from a life perspective. And, sometimes there's those stereotypes about Black people not liking to be outdoors or not liking to swim or whatever it might be. And I want to give my children, it's so critically important for me that I give my children the opportunity to do everything that they want to do. They don't have to do it, but I want to give them the option to do it. So, like my oldest child now, he is 2.5, and usually you start skiing maybe around 3, and my husband is a crazy skier. So, I can ski too, but not as great. But, it's like next winter, he will be on the slopes. I want him to do that. Then, he's got my side, which is all about language. What he speaks, he's multilingual anyway, but, it's about languages. It's about reading. It's about the arts. We're into architecture. And it's that bit. You want your child to be well-rounded. And especially with this year, I mean, for me, my personal journey this year, and also last year, actually, I wanted to be more connected with my Jamaican roots and my Jamaican heritage, not just to say my grandparents are Jamaican, but to understand what the makeup is of my whole heritage. And it's also bringing that to them. I want him to be proudly British. I want him to be proudly Italian. I want him to be proudly German. And I want him to be proudly Jamaican. All the parts that make not just him, but make them them. So that's the thing I always have in mind. No pressure, but giving children options to be what they want to be, basically. Over to you, Quincy.
I loved your answer about, being well-rounded and giving them the opportunity to be what they want to be, because I think that's how my husband and I are also parenting. When we grew up, or I'll talk about myself. When I grew up, I was thinking constantly about my experiences and how I was raised compared to how I want to raise my kids. And it doesn't necessarily mean that my parents failed me in any way. It just meant that maybe I wasn't getting what I needed, that matched my personality and what I needed. I think it was T.D. Jakes who spoke about, you can have a 10-gallon worth of love and be parented by somebody who only has a pint size, and that that doesn't necessarily match up. So there's that conversation that we're constantly having about how much do we have to give and whether or not that will produce a well-rounded child and a healthy child and a confident child. So for me, it's also just about raising them confidently. We want, like you mentioned, we want them to be confident in who they are. My eldest is 3 and my youngest is 1.5. And we deliberately gave them names that aren't necessarily associated to their culture. So my kids' names are Japanese names. We gave them that kind of theme. My name, as you guys can see as well, it's Quincy. So there's like nothing African about my name. And we deliberately did that because we wanted them to understand that their name, yes, is important, but it doesn't define who they are. And that is such a big theme in South Africa where I live, where it's like you're not considered Black if your name is not Black. We still have to get over those kind of stereotypes. And I want to raise my kids to be confident in who they are and understanding that, yes, you're backed up with a strong name. It might not be African, but it's still your name, and be proud of it. Be proud of your culture. And that exposure to everything, like you mentioned. We want to expose them to all types of things, no matter how expensive it might be, no matter how much effort or energy it might take from us, but we're constantly trying to be cognizant of what they need from us and not necessarily what we need or what we want to give them. So I hope that answers your question, Kumar, in terms of what we want for our kids.
Can I say something else, Quincy? Because as you were talking, you sparked something really important. A thought that just came to me. I want my children to feel comfortable in every space that they inhabit. I want them to feel that they belong. So for me, it's like, if my child goes skiing from the age of 3, he will always feel like he belongs on the slopes. He won't feel like people are looking at me because I'm Black on the slopes, because when he gets there, that's where he belongs. He knows, he understands. It's not like, I came to skiing a lot later in life. So when I used to be on, the ski slopes, and let me tell you, I've had so many accidents where I've fallen down the slopes, fallen down the pistes, twisted my knee, all sorts. In my head, I've rolled my eyes and I'm like, of course, the Black girl who's got on all the gear and can't ski properly. Ugh. But, it's that kind of thing. I want my children to feel like they jump in a pool and they can swim well, because what people might think of them, I don't want them to worry about that. I just want them to know that whatever environment they're in, they belong and they do it well. They do it to the best of their ability. And that was just when you were just saying, Quincy, talking about how you want them to be confident. I want them that same confidence in every single space that they're in.
And isn't that the danger, though, right, of trying to raise your child according to a specific culture or a specific reference? It's like you're boxing them into this particular type of being. And that was what we didn't want for them, right? We didn't want them to feel, we were raised in literally just a little bit after apartheid ended, but that didn't mean anything kind of was different in our society. And like, you're constantly being reminded of the fact that you're Black. Like, you're Black living in a white neighborhood, you're Black in a white school. And even now as we're working, you're constantly being reminded of just how Black you are. And we didn't necessarily want that for them. It's like, yes, you might be Black, you might be raised in an African country, but you need to be exposed to all sorts of cultures and all sorts of, like you said, sporting events, because that exposure also opens up your mind and your understanding of your capability and of like your potential. And that was what was important for us, is we don't want to box you into that category of you just thinking you start and end with being Black. Like, that is all that defines you.
Right.
This really reminds me of the conversation that I had a couple of weeks ago with the folks when we did part one, which was really about instilling confidence in your child. And all that being said, they're still walking in the world as a Black child. How do you, yes, expose them to all kinds of things, say that you can be all that you can be, give them that confidence, but also give them the reality that some folks are just not going to like you because of the color of your skin, or because of the color of your skin, there are XYZ institutional inequities. Like, have you had those conversations? How are you thinking about having those conversations with your children?
So for me, it's I have for anybody who doesn't know, my husband's white. So I have two mixed race children. I have a son who, when I say looks mixed race, he is brown, but on the lighter side with curly hair. My daughter looks white. There's no two ways about it. So at that moment, when you see the two of them together, I also know that I have to talk to them about their parts separately. But when I say separately, at a certain point, I'm going to have to talk to both of them about the impact of their exterior on their parts. So it's also that part about talking with my husband, who's white, to basically say, well, you also have to understand that having a son who is half Black, who looks like he's half Black, is going to also have a very different journey to you, who is what, like, you're white and you're blonde. Like that's a different conversation. But I think sometimes, or at least in my case, because I fervently believe in my ability to also do everything, I think it's explaining that, look, you know something, you don't have to go too far to find somebody who can do, because you come from a generation, you come from your mom, you come from your grandmother, who have always been able to do. But it's that conversation to explain and say, it might not always be easy. You might have to, like, even now, people want to touch his hair. And he's 2.5, and I've said, who can touch your hair? And he's like, mommy, daddy, nana. And I'm like, right. People can't touch your hair, because I want him to understand that, A, this is not allowed. You are not an animal in the petting zoo. But for him to also have clear boundaries as to who he is, what's allowed and where it goes. And I think because I explain it to him in a way that says, no one can do it at this age, he doesn't question it. It's just like, no. But as you get older, I also know that these conversations are going to be a lot more difficult to keep bringing it in when the comments become a lot more poignant and they're not always nice, for example. But I also do think that even though we live in Munich, his nursery, for example, is very international. Their nursery is very international. So it's not the case of where it's spot the Black. And I think that's something that can sometimes help when you're in an environment where you're not the only Black child. Because his sister can't help him, because she don't look Black, so she can't even say, let's share this experience together as they get older. It's more that having him also in an environment that's not just purely white, where he just doesn't feel like he stands out, will also help him to see, hey, I'm not so different, and to keep the confidence part going, because we have to do that at home, but he needs to see that reflection when he's also outside of the home. Over to you, Quincy.
I was just laughing at the fact that, there's people who are wanting to touch your 2.5-year-old's hair, and like, because it's so ridiculous that you'd ask to touch a child's hair. Like, I don't understand why adults don't understand personal boundaries, even when it comes to children.
But no, I never said they asked. Like, I never said they asked. Huh? That's not what I said. I said they touch. They don't ask. So this is you having to teach a child to be like, no, as opposed to people go, can I? Yeah. It's already like hand almost in the hair, and then you're like, no, right?
Oh wow. Okay, so here's the difference, right, in our environments. You guys know I live in South Africa, and our demographic is completely different. We are majority people of color. Whether you are Black, in my country, we consider mixed race. They are a culture group on their own, a racial group on their own, and they call themselves colored, or Indian. But that's the thing. My kids' preschool, that's the difference, right? So his school is majority people of color. So they don't have that issue of spot the Black or like what's going on here. But here's the problem. Now, the problem comes in is where their teachers are white. Their study material is white. So when they sing songs at school, it's usually white characters. If they're doing, especially things like professional things like, hey, here's a teacher, here's a doctor, here's a this, here's a that, it's usually a white face that they're being shown. So one of the things that my husband and I put into place is to make sure that when they're in our space and around us, all of their material is black. All of the material is people of color. And we've struggled really hard because that material is difficult to find. You can scour YouTube, like we had to dig deep, but we make sure that if their material doesn't have actual human beings in it, then we're looking at like animals. Then everything is, we're not necessarily dealing with race, right? So they're still a bit young to understand the concept of different races. Like my 3-year-old, it's only now that he started to sort of identify that that person is a different color to that person and that person is different. But what I do like is in enforcing or instilling those characters and making sure that even in his shows, he's seeing black. We were watching Spider-Man, the universe one, the new one, with the Spider-Man, and he's actually a black teenager. And he loves that because he jumps around and he's like, Mom, I'm Spider-Man. And the thing is, the Spider-Man character looks like him. He's got big hair like the character. It's curly like the character. So he literally identifies himself with that character of Spider-Man. And it's the cutest one. He'll sit there going, Mama, is that me? Like, is that red? And look, Mama, I'm jumping and I'm doing this. And I think that's how in my country and in my demographic, we start to get them to really see themselves for all the wonder that they are, because the schooling material shows them something different. And that's not going to change. No matter what age they get to, it's even worse. Like, so when they move on to primary school, move on to high school, that kind of imagery of sort of enforcing that white is good and black is not is just going to get worse. So we are trying our best at home to not necessarily have a strict race conversation that you are black and they're white, but to just reinforce positive imagery about blackness and our culture.
I think that's so key. And Quincy, we talked about this when I was on your show about the importance of having those black images, having the black literature, and how precious is it that your son is like, I'm a Spider-Man, isn't that me? Just automatically just realizing. I think in this conversation, I am shocked to hear that in a country that is 98% African, Black African, that the schooling and the materials that they're getting is 100% white, Eurocentric. I mean, that's the issue that we have here in the United States, absolutely, and we're trying to fight against that on so many different levels. But to have that idea and to realize that that's a commonality that we all have, that in these public spaces, white is considered the norm, regardless of what the majority is. That's like mind-boggling. That's like literally just blew my mind today.
But so that's our battle where we are, right? Our struggle is institutional. It's teaching them that no matter like you said, no matter what space you function in, you belong. So that's the battle that we fight. It's you're going to come across and be in a space where it's, you're going to be in a boardroom and you might be one of 2 black people in that space, but you belong. And that's generally how we're trying to raise them. Obviously, they're still too young to understand any of these concepts, but it starts that young in reinforcing and getting them to understand positive black imagery and that you can be anything you want to be. There's actually a show that I really like the show. It's called Word Party, right? And it basically teaches toddlers words. But we had to be careful as well about him watching those shows, because the older he got, whenever they would learn a new word, they did a show on occupations. And they had a teacher and a bus driver and I think a doctor and something else. And all of the prominent professions were white faces and the bus driver was black. And my child might not understand that now, but I get it watching it. So we have to kind of always be watching, like you as the parent have to be cognizant all the time of what they're watching and what they're listening to, because it seems so subliminal and other races might not understand what the big deal is, because your children who are non-black are being shown doctors and surgeons and businessmen and firefighters, whereas our children are being shown nurses and bus drivers and the garbage man and sort of those blue-collar servicing jobs is where you will see like a black face. And that's what we are trying to combat in their current teaching and space.
I was going to say, just back to your point, Kumara, I think what Quincy's saying it completely personifies what it means to be the dominant culture. And when people say, what do you mean about dominant culture? It's exactly that. The dominant culture is where, in a country of 98% Black African people, your education syllabus shows white faces and white songs. That is what dominant culture means. That is the power you have in a dominant culture, to still dictate the narrative to children, to say, well, this is how life is, but actually what you're telling them is, but this is not for you. And that is what we're absolutely, in every sense of the word, working against. It's that continuous, something, everything's for you. And I think that's also, when it comes to children, I think that's why also you're, as the parents or as godmothers or, godfathers or whatever, your network of friends, and when I say network, I mean the people you can come into contact with, are also important. Because it's one thing to see a Black doctor on television. It's another thing to see when your mum says, hey, do you want to talk to this Black doctor so that he can tell you what it's like, what that looks like? Hey, I've got a friend here who's a Black lawyer. Hey, I've got another friend here who is a notary. I've got another friend who's a Black architect. I've got a friend who's a Black interior designer, whatever it might be, because you don't want it to feel as though it's too far away from the realm of possibility, that it's too much of a dream. You don't want it to feel like they're stretching so far because that's a person on television, as opposed to a person that's in mummy or daddy's circle. And it doesn't have to be close circle, but just that level of accessibility. Hey, here's Auntie Quincy, she's an entrepreneur. Hey, there's Auntie Kwamara, she does that. So that you can actually say, these are real people that I know, that do it, that rock the house, because I think that's also something important for children. It's, yes, they have imaginations, but as they get older, they need to be able to grasp the reality of people really being able to do it. It's inspirational. It's inspirational reading about people who have made it. It's inspirational seeing that someone's doing something amazing. But when you can sit down, like we can sit down right now, and see two other women doing their thing and rocking it, you go, well, hey, this is what it's about. There are other women out there. So you know what, even if I have a tired day, I know that Kwamara is giving it 110%. So do you know what, because I know she's giving it 100, I'm going to do the same. And it's that we have to also think about building for our children, because it's the same way the Old Boys Network works. And that's what we have to get better at doing. The Old Boys Network is, hey, your son who wants to come and work with me, I'm not going to say any big company names, at X company. Yeah, just send him over, blah, 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 blah. And that's how they manage to pass down wealth, pass down connections. I want to be able to do that for my kids too. Hey, you know something? Blah, blah, blah's got out over there. Would you take my son on for an internship? Because the reality is, they say, 76% of jobs come by referral. I want my children.
I think, Leanne, I think you've touched on something so important there about the, what did you call it? What was the term that you used? Because I have a different term in my head now. Oh, yes. Old boys club. Yeah, I don't want to use my term because it's a little bit, people would think it's racially inflated, but I mean, yeah. So the old boys club. No, but that is the case, right? And we were having a conversation with a friend of mine as well, just this week actually, about that, to say in our African culture, we consider nepotism a lazy way of doing things. Our parents were like, they were adamant, we're not going to help you with anything. When you finished school, you need to buy yourself your first car. You need to make sure that you're working hard and buying yourself your first apartment. And all of these things, you need to hustle and go get yourself that first job. Whereas our counterparts are not hustling; they are not struggling to that depth to make it. And that's also what we're striving to do. And I'm hopefully changing that culture, and having these conversations will change that mindset, so that we understand that helping your kids come up isn't turning out lazy children. I've seen my colleagues when, in corporate, who do exactly what you're mentioning, Leanne. The child is in matric, senior year, hasn't even applied to college yet, hasn't even had an acceptance letter or anything, but they are in the corporate spaces shadowing. He's walking around with the CEO, walking around with directors. shadowing and getting to understand how all of these pieces fit in together, but most importantly, networking. So by the time he's done studying, he's got at least 5 offers already waiting for him because his parents have been doing the work and helping him get there. But he didn't skip any steps. He's not going to college to get that degree. He's still doing it. But we are still keeping our children behind because we want them to be strong. Like, I struggle with that concept of not wanting to give them that extra help. And I think that's what's important about how we're choosing to raise them. I think our generation than a previous generation.
Because I think what's not understood, it depends. I think it also depends on where you're sitting. But if you, like in my case, my grandparents are from Jamaica, so they went over to the Windrush. So they started their whole life from there together, built everything up. And they helped their children as much as they could. But going back to what you said, I think there's something ingrained, sometimes not in all Black people, of course, but there's something about Black people that always say, if you work hard. But the reality is, to be competitive, you need a network. And the other point is, and don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against anybody who makes their children pay keep, because this is not what I'm saying. But it's those kinds of things sometimes that also, if your child is only earning, let's say, £100 a week, don't ask them for £50 to pay keep, because they also need to be able to invest in their future. Because as you said, Quincy, other families, other non-Black families give their kids a leg up. They pull the resources together to say, okay, I'm going to help you with a deposit. I'm going to help you with. And that's exactly the same point. As you said, I want to be able to give my children the opportunity that they don't have to worry about, hey, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to do this when I'm going to university? They can focus on what it is they're doing, but also with the network that their parents have, they can leverage that to also come forward. Because as you said, it's not about skipping steps directly, but it is about potentially skipping some of the interview processes, because you already know, you've got in the door. Because as you and I both know, as we all know, the young boy who comes in to shadow the CEO, he gets more tips than we will also be in that same amount of time. If we say welcome when he's just a grad. And that's what they skip. Sorry, Kumara.
No worries. So I was going to say, I think the points that you guys are making are so accurate. One is about this idea that if you work hard and you just work hard, you're going to live this sort of idyllic dream life. But we know that's not the case. We know that there are people who work 60 hours a week and are still poor, living paycheck to paycheck. This is not about necessarily working hard. It's about working smarter. So let's say that you're a parent who's like, man, yeah, I really do want to leverage my community. We're really saying, we're sort of saying it takes a village, right? It takes a village to raise a child, essentially. So I want to leverage my community, but I don't know how to go about doing that. Do you guys have tips for how you leverage your community, or thinking about leveraging your community as your children grow?
I think I can talk from my my cultural sort of perspective, and in my country, and we see this all the time. In our Black culture, it's almost like you're holding a secret, and you can't let anybody into the secret of success that you have. And that's what we're trying to dispel, right? So in my company, we just started a magazine as well. It's called Care Insights. And the whole purpose of that magazine is only one thing, is to profile young African leaders coming up, people who are doing amazing things, and from the different spectrum of success, because, success is relative. So it's like, people who have really succeeded are like CEOs, and those that are still coming up are creating their own thing and are doing well in their space. And the idea behind that is to show other Black children that you can make it in whatever space you want to move in, and that you don't have to hold on to your success. Because our kids tend to think, okay, but if I have this great idea, I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to build quietly, and I'm going to build by myself, and I'm going to make it on my own. And I think that's what we're trying to say, is we're trying to say, open up, guys, because the other guys are doing it. I don't know in your countries, you guys can sort of share in your stories, but in my community, we see Jewish people open up. and they open up and they help each other, and that's how their communities are constantly growing and budding and thriving. We've got the Afrikaans group who do the same. So they're constantly teaching their kids the secrets to whatever industry they're in, and they're thriving and they're making it. But in the Black culture, we're still so closed off. We have this idea that if anybody knows your secret, they're going to take it away from you, right? If anybody knows how you're doing it, they're going to step in and either bewitch you or whatever the case may be, but they're going to find a way to pull that success from right under your rug. And for us, we're just trying, like Leanne said, is exposure. Exposure is key, because I think the more of us are open about what we're doing and our successes, the more it will give other people the same kind of courage and the confidence to open up and see, do you see nothing's happened to me? Like, I can share my story and I can be vulnerable with you and I can share my tales of success and bring you with me, right? And pull you up and say, no, my friend, do it differently. I know you're starting your business. This is what I did. This is my network. This is who helps me with my website. This is who helps me with my accounting. We need to start building that level of culture and networking so that our kids also kind of understand that space.
I definitely agree. But I'd also add to your point, I think the problem generally within the wider Black community is that we have been conditioned to believe in scarcity, and we haven't been conditioned to believe in abundance. And I think that's what I think we have to educate our children that there is enough. There's more than enough. There is enough to go around. There's enough food. There's enough opportunity. There's enough for success. Because what we've been taught fundamentally is there is a scarcity of Black success. There is a scarcity in Black talent. So if you have something and you're Black, don't share it with anybody else, because someone's going to steal it from you, because there's not enough of it to go around. So I think we have to educate our children also in abundance, that they understand that there's more than enough to go around, because only when you understand abundance can you truly be able to really share what it is you're about. Because if you believe that scarcity is there, then you're not going to share, because as you said, Quincy, it's my secret. It's my secret. This is my, and we all know an idea is only ever that. It's just an idea. Somebody can take, at the end of the day, look at the patent wars that Apple has with Samsung, iPhone versus Samsung versus is it the Samsung Galaxy versus Huawei, whatever. An idea is only that, but it's execution that makes the difference. And that's what we have to teach our children, that whatever it is that you want to do, it doesn't matter if you share the idea, because no one has your magic. No one has my magic. And until our children will only ever understand their own magic unless we really nurture them and say, hey, look, what you have is special. Right. We all know it's been proven boys have a short attention span. They need to build it down. They need to burn off their energy in school. So if they're telling me that my child is truant at school, I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to chastise him, but I'm going to look for a way to burn down his energy we have to be complementary to the systems that seek to hold our children down. But we also have to teach them those principles that say anything you do, it's your magic that makes it magic, no one else's. So you can share it. You can share what your idea is. Someone can try to take it, but it won't be you. It won't be the essence of you, because they don't have that. And that for me is how we have to start to talk to each other, and how we have to open the conversation up on a broader level, that people realize that there is abundance as opposed to scarcity.
Something that you said, Leanne, I would love for you to just talk a little bit more about, because it's just an interesting concept. So you said be complementary to the system that is trying to hold our children down. You gave an example, but do you have some more about can you tell us a little bit more about what that means, and give people some concrete action steps to do that? What does that look like?
Do you know something? I remember school, a lot of the Black boys at school were at primary school.
Is it just me, or are we losing Leanne?
But it's the boisterous.
Sorry, Leanne, I think we might be losing you for a second. I know you're out in the mountains today in Italy. Can you check your connection for us? Yeah, I think we're having a little issue.
Yeah, we're having a little issue.
Oh, hold on.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right.
No worries. But so, Quincy, I would love to just
Yeah.
hear a little bit more about what you're thinking, or if you have some thoughts around what Leanne just said.
Yeah, I do, and I think she was actually getting to her point. I think she was trying to to tell us a story, but I was going to say that as well, to say it's really important that as parents we are reinforcing and affirming your child. Like, you need to affirm what the world isn't saying to them, and you need to counter the messages and the things that they are saying. I'll give you, because you asked for stories. Growing up, my primary school experience, my family was some of the first to sort of be incorporated into an all-white school, and then slowly, obviously, the school became drowned with other Black families and other Black kids. But because we were raised to be confident children, my teachers didn't like me at all. They didn't understand where my confidence was coming from. They didn't understand why my speech was so clear, why my English was so good. And that's just because of the work my parents were doing outside of that schooling system. So I constantly had teachers telling me, "Oh, you think you're so good, you think you're so clever, but all you are is just another Black girl." And I never let that kind of message sit in me, because I had a mom, at home, who was affirming everything I am instead of everything the teacher was saying, or the institution was saying, or the outside world was saying about me. And I think it's really important to keep reaffirming that you need to be the voice and you need to be their guiding light. So whenever any teacher or any boss that they come across, or any lecturer that they come across, comes up to them and says, all you'll ever be is another Black boy or another Black girl, and you're not so smart, you are the voice that says, no, what did we speak about? This is who you are, and you affirm it. So your voice as a parent, and this is what I stand by, should never be the voice that confirms what the world says about them. So words like "you are lazy" should never be coming out of your mouth as a parent, and that's a big one in our culture, lazy. Words like "inadequate." Your voice really needs to be the one that is affirming, no matter what anybody else around them is saying. And I think that's when it comes to, now you have to consciously parent that way, and you have to step out of how you were nurtured to parent, and step into this new age of parenting. So I think that's what I would tell parents to do, is be conscious of the words that you are saying to your children, because they've got the entire world behind them telling them otherwise. And if your voice on top of that also says, yes, all you are is another Black boy, how damaging is that? So I think, we need to be conscious about the words we're using with our children.
Quincy, oh my God, I love that. That is so true. Yes, Leanne, we've got you. Come on in.
Just to your point also, Quincy, you made a personal point, and as you were speaking, it made me think of something else. You're really good at triggering memories in my mind. This is awesome. So when I went to school, so in Britain, we start school when we're 4. And when I started school, I could already read. I could say the alphabet. And at that moment, my teacher didn't like it. She said to my mom that I was a troublesome child. And because I didn't say abaca, I said ABC. She didn't like that either. And she was like, no, your child is a problem. And my mom went to the school, and she sat down with that teacher, and she told her some things. My mom does not swear, nothing like that, but she told her some things, and she told her, my child can already read. She's not stupid. She's not truant. Your job as a teacher is to promote her, is to extend her, to stretch her, and to challenge her, to improve her. But what you will not do is force my child into a regression. And that for me was probably one of the strongest things. As you said, Quincy, it's having your parents in your corner to basically defend you and say, no. And then the other point that I was making before was about, a lot of Black boys were really intelligent at my primary school, got to secondary school, and they were accused of being truant. And it's not that they were truant, it's just that the teachers who were teaching them didn't have any interest. But the problem was, when their parents got to the school, instead of challenging the teachers, what did they do? Cuff the child around the head and say, why you bad? And as you said, Quincy, the system is already there trying to push us down. They're already, especially Black boys. They're already trying to push us down, push us away, make sure we don't succeed. It's our job as parents to challenge those teachers, to make sure when they say your child's doing this, I want to know what. I want to know why. And if you think my child is truant, then I need you to tell me what the issue is. We have to become confident as parents to speaking to these. When I say these so-called educators, I mean the ones who have a racist bias when they're dealing with our children. And we also have to be brave and fearless about raising the issues and not just taking it, oh, well, this your child's truant. Why? I want to talk about it. I don't have time now. No, not you don't have time now. You've made it an issue. Let's discuss it. Don't just take a teacher's word for the word. Really go into it, because this system isn't about us. They're not looking to make us succeed. They're not looking for ways to encourage our children to learn differently. And until those things are in place, we as the parents, we have to be the protectors, the educators, the overseers. We have to do more than parent when we have Black children. We have to fulfill so many different roles to make sure they come out of the education system not just unscathed, but thriving and successful.
I think that's all right? We want them to be thriving. We want them to be successful. Leanne and Quincy, you guys are intelligent, fearless, brave. You walk and speak in your truth. What resources do you have for parents who may not have?
Quincy?
What resources do you guys have for parents who may not have that internal confidence and that internal fearlessness, but want to be the type of advocate that we're talking about, want to be the type of parent who's going to go to bat for their children to ensure that their children are getting not only the best education possible, but also are confident and feel confident in who they are as they walk through this world?
I think one thing that we do, or one thing that we did, is we try to educate ourselves. So we are not relying on our kids' teachers to tell us anything about our children and their development. We've sent our kids to like a really amazing school. Like for us, what's really important is, and this is in priority, is obviously security, which is roof over their head, and are they safe? And then it's education, and then comfort. So education is a big one for us in our house, and most of our budget we're able actually goes to that. So they go to an extremely good school with really great teachers. But one thing that we don't allow to happen is I don't allow my teachers to tell me how my child should be developing or anything like that. Is I do a lot of reading myself. So there's a lot of resources. And as you're asking me now, I don't have anything in my head that's specific that any parent can go into, but I Google a lot. Like Google is your friend. If you're seeing a behavior in your child that is like curious or whatever, and you can only know these things if you're actually an attentive parent, right? So if you're paying attention to your child and their milestones, you'll know and you'll be curious about their development. And I Google those things a lot. I'll Google, okay, so my son is 2 years old, and he started to do this. What does this mean? And I'll Google, just as simple as that sentence is, to learn myself about what they're going through physically and what they should be doing cognitively at this age. So we are attentive parents. I just want to also bring up, I think Leanne was talking about something, and it brought into mind little things as well that you can do as a parent. And, you know, we were not taught these things as Black people. Like I know my family, they're not very touchy, but I read as well that, you know, a child needs at least at minimum 9 touches from a parent or a caregiver to feel loved. That's 9 touches during the day. So like that for us was really important. So we were so conscious about that. And, you know, it's patting of the head. It's, you know, patting him when he's done something good. It's hugging in the morning. It's giving them butterfly kisses. You know, that level, it's at minimum 9 times a day for a child to feel that you actually do love them. Because remember, child's love language is completely different to an adult's love language and what they understand about it. And I think another important thing is, and Leanne was saying it in terms of standing up to your teachers, right? We're cognizant of that too, to say if we are standing with the child, never underestimate what your child understands and how young they are. These kids are smart and they understand what it is you're saying. And if you don't have their back, like Leanne mentioned, they know it and they can feel it. If a teacher or any person of authority is telling you something about your child that isn't them, number one, look at your child's reaction to what that person of authority is saying. because you will see in their body language as well that something is not right about what they're saying, instead of just assuming that what this person of authority is saying. Then number two is always have their back in that moment. So it doesn't matter what that teacher is saying or what that person of authority is saying. It's, listen, I know my child and this is my child, and I'm not necessarily with you on this one, but have your child's back. And then you can reprimand at home. So take them away, pull them aside, and then have an honest conversation with them. We do this even with our 3-year-old, and he completely understands it. That's why I say never underestimate how young they are and you think they don't know. But that's really, really important. And so he will give you an account of the story. And because they don't know how to lie at this age, everything is honest to the very little detail. Detail. And then you can address it with the teacher at another time. So always for me is just bear that in mind, have your child's back no matter, because this person of authority, whether it's their teacher or their nanny, their babysitter, whatever the case may be, he needs to know that you can trust them and they can trust them as well. So do little things like that. Educate yourself as well. Don't leave it to just teachers to give you that source of knowledge. Educate yourself, read up on parenting, and then always have their back. That's my 2 cents. Leanne, over to you.
So I have 2 things to say. So the first one is never underestimate what you can learn from your parents and grandparents' parenting style. Because, and when I say what you can learn, and, you know, when my kids were super young and they were crying for this and crying for that, and I am like you, Quincy. You know, when I was pregnant, I bought like What to Expect When You're Expecting, and I bought Yeah Baby. And then when the kids were born, I was like, What to Expect When You're Expecting first year. Then I bought What to Expect When You're Expecting second year. Like I'm that mom. I am the mom that downloads the app that says, here are the leaps. I am that mom that like wants to know the child might be doing this. Okay, yes, she's going for a growth spurt. Like that's me. That's the way I am. But what I love is looking to my grandma and be like, Grandma, she's doing this, she's doing that. And she's like, yeah, you know, this is what's going on. And there's a lot to learn from older people because, hey, they didn't have these books and they relied solely on instinct. And that's my point. Never let your instincts be dulled by books. Like I love a good book. Don't get me wrong. And as I said to you, I'm all about books, checklist, to-do list, list on list, and list for the list. But watching my grandmother and just having actual instinct, tuning into your child from that young age. You know, they always say a mother understands the different cries, but anyone who spends time around a child will, and it's that part of child rearing where you don't necessarily have to read books, but listen to what your child is saying. Listen to how they come home. Watch their reactions. If they've come home and you see something's off and they say, how are you? And they go, I'm fine. But you know they're not fine. Don't take it at face value. Let them feel like they can come to you. Because you know what, as we all know, kids get older, and Quincy, you and I are in the young stage. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 10-month-old. So we're in the young stage. We haven't hit puberty and all those awkward ages yet. But it's, if we lay those foundations now where your children know they can come to you, where they know that no matter what they say, you might get vexed, you might even shout, but they know that you love them and it's a safe place. That also gives them the confidence as they get older to actually say to you, Mom, the teacher talked to me in a way, but I felt it was racist, without thinking you're going to go, I don't believe you. Are you sure the teacher meant it? Because I think sometimes we get like people gaslight their own children because they themselves weren't believed. And I think there's a lot, you know, and I think this applies not just to child rearing, but also to finding partners, having a successful relationship, loving yourself, is understanding the legacy you have before in order to really change what it is you bring forward and what you give and what you create as your legacy. So if your parents weren't talkative or weren't communicative or weren't affectionate and you knew that you lacked from that, it's changing the cycle, breaking the cycle, and then saying to your kids, well, I'm here. As you said, Quincy, the touches a day. I didn't know. See, you're a reader, so you know that it's the 9 touches. But it's that, you know, touching your kids, coming in for snuggles, giving them the kisses, you know, doing stupid things together, showing them that you're not scared to get your hands dirty with pain. All these things that show them that you're willing to communicate to them in a way that they need, as opposed to in a way that you need. And that's how I feel about parenting. That, you know, I spend my time looking at myself, looking at what I've inherited, but also how do I change any of the bad patterns? How do I on the good patterns? But how do my children ultimately know that whatever it is they need on their level, mommy's there to talk to you, whether it's literally or you know, crawling on my hands and knees just to show them that, you know, I'm there. I'm not going to play with you while I'm standing up, for example.
But that's exactly what we're talking about, being an involved parent. That's what being an involved parent means. It's you're paying attention to your child, right? And we also have a rule in the house is when it's family time, all phones are down. Like, it's so easy, especially since most of my work is done on my phone. It's so easy just to pick up that phone and pay attention to the phone. And we realize that our kids noticed it as well. Because when my child is talking to me, and if I'm on my phone, he'll come and literally push my phone down and say, "Mama, I'm talking to you." So it's being involved. It's actually giving them the attention that they need, and as they need it. And I think it's so important what you said is, when you put all these things in place, that's just the natural way that not just your parenting style, but your relationship is going to be with them as they grow as well, into their teen years, into their preteens, into adolescent. And they'll also then learn to understand that home is a safe space. Mom and dad is a safe space. Whoever it is that's looking after them, that is a safe space. And no matter what phases I'm going through growing up, I know that home is a safe space. And that's what we're trying to cultivate. That's essentially, fundamentally, what we're trying to cultivate is for them to know that home is a safe space. And I think that's why with us, we're so strict. Like, energies are a big thing for us in our house. So we really listen and we understand energies as well. If my kids are apprehensive about anybody, whether you're an uncle or a granddad, we're careful about that. So this is the threshold of our home, and this is the safe space that we're creating for them. And nobody's allowed through those doors that give our children anxiety. So we are careful and cognizant about the words that we are spewing to them. Whether your grandma or uncle, we had to have conversations with our entire family when we had our kids. My friend calls our parenting style rogue parenting, because this is like unheard of, to sit down elders and say, this is how we want to parent our children. We would appreciate if you guys would watch your words, because words are important. They sit into your soul. We would appreciate it if you watched your energy when you come to visit. Please be about the children. Whatever it is that's going on amongst us adults, and whatever it is we're fighting or whatever, please check your energy at the door, because these children will feel it and they'll be confused. They won't understand what it is they're feeling, but they'll just understand that something is not right. So we are big on energies. We're big on positive affirmation and words as well, and just being completely involved and asking them and talking. So we don't ask questions and then not listen, because kids also pay attention to that. When I think about myself as a teenager, I stopped talking. So through my teenage years at home, I stopped talking completely, because I knew that whatever I was saying, nobody was listening anyway. And then my mom would get annoyed because she's like, "You stopped talking. Why have you stopped talking?" But it's because we haven't built a cultural relationship of talking. So, and listening, right? Of talking and actively listening. So that was like a thing that my mom and I had to work on through that time, to say, "Okay, Quincy, I'm listening now. Can you talk? Can you start talking to me, because I am listening now?" So yeah, it's all of those things I think that come into play. I'm just hearing my kids. Let me just mute this. Leanne, I'll give it to you.
No, agreed for sure with what you're saying. And I think for me, it's not just showing the kids, like, having my parenting style, but also for the kids to see in me that wherever I walk and wherever I go, I show them that I know that I belong. They don't see me, you know, hunched down, head covered. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. I'm a lot of the time I'm in very, very white spaces. Right now I'm in, you know, northern Italy in the mountains. Apart from having my mum with me, there's not another Black person that I've seen for ages, you know. But it's showing them that I can be comfortable, that I do enjoy wherever it is I am, because children mimic our behavior too. So it's not just about how we speak to them, but it's how they see us behave. How do they see us behave in stressful situations? How do they see us behave when, as you said, talking about energy, Quincy, when you and your husband might have a disagreement? How do they see that? How do they interpret that? What's going on? What's your communication style? Because as you said, they soak everything up. They soak it in. They're sponges. So just to reiterate, for me, it's all about building that really strong foundation by actions towards them, but actions outside of them, so that they see, hey, mommy, daddy, they are rounded people, they do all of these things. And it's subliminally communicated, but it's not any less potent because you don't say it. It's the thing that sticks. And as our children grow up, we're building memories with them. You know, these are going to be the memories that they may not actively remember, but these are the memories that create their feelings and their reactions to things later on in life. We're creating their triggers right now in this moment. So it's like, I want to create healthy triggers. I want to create healthy memories so that when they get older, the relationships they build, how they deal with stressful situations at school, how they deal with both good and bad things. They may not even understand why they deal with it in a certain way, but the parents know how to do it. That's what's really important for me, just getting those foundations really built in and locked in.
This conversation has so many beautiful nuggets around building these subliminal messages, ensuring that we have good energy, that home is the safe space. No matter what happens out in the world, they know they can come home. What kind of words are we using with our children? Oh my God, that is so key. In fact, my biggest pet peeve is sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is so not true. I do not know why that is even a nursery rhyme, because words are so impactful. They are so hurtful. They carry so much energy and so much weight. So to be so thoughtful and cognizant, always showing that you have your child's back, even if you think that they were wrong, but you're going to handle that at home. But out front, the world knows that you have their back, because it's important. Once someone realizes that maybe the parent does not have the back of their child, then they feel that they can do whatever they can to that child, right? And continue to act negatively towards them. So you've got to show that united front, especially when you're raising Black and brown children. This has been so insightful, delightful. Thank you guys so much for all of your vulnerability. Before we go, any last words or action steps for the parents out there, parents of Black and brown children, but parents in general?
And mine would just be, you don't have to be perfect. None of us are. You don't have to be the perfect parent, but try your best to be attentive, because it's only attention and instincts that will help you navigate this. It's a beautiful journey, but it's a beautiful, difficult, confusing, amazing thing. But don't try and be perfect, because it's not possible. Just listen to your children, because they will always tell you what it is they need. Non-verbal communication makes up 85% as to how we communicate. So look for the signs, listen for the signs, see them, and just love your children as much as you can. That's it from me.
I think for me, I just want to reiterate to everybody out there that, you know, I had to also go through this journey. So I've always wanted to be a mom, and I always knew that I was going to be a mom. But can you guys still hear me? Sorry, are we lagged? Oh, okay. So, but because of previous traumas, when we finally got to the point of saying, okay, we're going to have kids now, it was really traumatic for me. And all of these thoughts came through to say, am I enough? Will I be a good enough mom? Will I have enough of me in me to give to these kids to be a good mom? Or will all my triggers again impact them in their lives? And I had to get healthy for myself as well before being a mom. But one thing, like, it was like an aha moment that kind of clicked in me, and in my meditation and having conversations with God. And he said, you know what? I gave you that soul for a reason. Like, when I give you kids, I gave you that soul for a reason, and you have all that you have within you to raise that child. So like Leanne said, instinct is so important. Really understand that you have already been predestined and preordained with everything you need inside of you to give to that tiny human and to raise that tiny human the way they need to be raised. So be confident in your parenting style. Like I said, educate yourself as much as you want to. Get help, listen to people, because you never know who might have that advice that you're looking for. Don't parent in isolation. I think that's one of the worst things that you can do for yourself. And again, yes, you don't have to be perfect. You generally just have to be you for that child, because that child was given to you. So be you, like, be authentically who you are, and always have their best interest in mind. And yes, create safe spaces. Absolutely create safe spaces for them.
Leanne, Quincy, Thank you guys so much for spending this hour, not only with me, but with all of our audience, really sharing these gems. I think so many of us have such great things to now take away, and hopefully all of our children will feel loved, supported, and confident, and then our next generation will be so much better than our current one at this moment in time because of all the good work that we are all doing. Oh, looks like Leanne unfortunately got kicked off. This is what happens when we're doing live and she's out in the mountains of Italy. But again, thank you all so much. I just want to say also a special thank you to our sponsor who sponsored today's event, and also 2 weeks ago when we've been doing Parenting Black and Brown Children. That's James Oliver Jr. from the Parentpreneur Foundation. Please check them out, parentpreneurfoundation.org. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Bye.